The week after the first night passed in a blur. Ethan and Claire moved through their routine, but the quiet moments between tasks felt louder. Every glance, every small gesture seemed sharper, more charged. The house itself seemed to hold the memory of that night, shadows on the walls, the lingering warmth of conversation. The way the snow had pressed against the windows. Nothing had happened yet, but everything had shifted. Claire noticed it first at the kitchen table. She was sipping her coffee when Ethan came in, rubbing his eyes from sleep. Their conversation started about bills and groceries. Nothing unusual. Then Olivia's name slipped into the air casually, almost as if it were part of the weather report. She asked about my art again, Claire said quietly, stirring her coffee. Ethan looked at her, raising an eyebrow. They've been reaching out a lot, he said, voice calm but careful. You want them to? Claire paused, thinking. I don't know, she admitted. Nice, being seen. I didn't realize I'd missed it. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood the feeling better than he wanted to. Being seen. Not just observed, but understood. The attention hadn't been harmful, but it had stirred something inside both of them. Something that had been lying dormant for years. By midweek, the invitations became clearer. Mark suggested a small art discussion over wine. Olivia invited Claire to a quiet brunch to talk about her latest painting. Nothing overt, nothing inappropriate. But the energy behind the invitations felt different. Curious, magnetic. Claire accepted the brunch, telling Ethan she wanted to step out for a short while. He didn't argue, though he felt the familiar tightness in his chest. The brunch was light and filled with laughter, but it carried a tension that neither Claire nor Olivia had planned. Questions about favorite colors turned into questions about choices in life. Olivia asked Claire what she wanted, what she longed for, things that went deeper than polite conversation. Claire answered honestly, her voice soft but clear. She felt a mix of warmth and fear in the honesty. It was freeing, but it also felt dangerous. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed home, alone with his thoughts. He tried to read, to work, to focus on mundane tasks, but his mind kept replaying images from that first night. How Claire had laughed at Mark's joke, how her eyes had lit up when she spoke. He realized he had missed seeing her like that, noticed, appreciated, admired. The feeling gnawed at him, a quiet longing that made him both proud and uneasy. Thursday evening, the tension was tangible. Claire returned home more animated than usual. Her smile lingered. Her voice carried a lilt Ethan hadn't heard in months. He wanted to ask, to understand, but he knew better than to push. Instead, he waited, watching her, feeling again what it meant to notice someone you love in a new light. Later that night, they sat together in the living room, the fire flickering, casting shadows on the walls. Silence stretched comfortably between them at first. Then Claire spoke. I liked being noticed, she admitted, turning toward him. Not just by them, but by anyone. I had forgotten what that felt like. Ethan nodded, reaching for her hand. I liked it too, he said quietly, and it scares me. Me too, Claire replied. They looked at each other, both understanding, without needing more words. The watching hadn't been harmful, but it had awakened something fragile, something that required care. The next few days brought more messages. Claire received notes from Olivia asking how she felt about her life, her choices, her happiness. Mark wrote to Ethan about goals he had abandoned, about passions he had forgotten. Each message was simple, polite, but underneath, it carried a tension that neither Ethan nor Claire could ignore. One evening, they both received a message at the same time. It was a joint invitation and informal gathering, just coffee and conversation. No pressure, no expectation. But the words felt charged, purposeful. Both Ethan and Claire stared at their screens, understanding the weight behind the offer. Ethan exhaled slowly. I don't know if we should, he said. But I also know we can't ignore it. They decided to attend, but with rules of their own. They would be honest. They would speak openly, and they would protect their bond above all else. The gathering was different from the first. It was lighter, almost playful. Coffee steamed in mugs. Soft music played in the background. But the attention was unmistakable. Mark leaned toward Claire slightly when she spoke about her art. Olivia studied Ethan's gestures, smiling at moments. He didn't notice. Again, nothing crossed a line, but the tension in the air was palpable. Ethan felt a surge of pride mixed with unease. Claire was radiant, alive in a way he hadn't realized he had missed. He wanted to protect her, but he also wanted to savor the joy she carried. Claire felt the same, noticed, admired, awake to feelings she hadn't allowed herself in years. As the evening drew to a close, the four of them lingered in the living room. The conversation grew quieter, more intimate. Laughter came, but softer now. Words were chosen carefully. The line between friendship and something more blurred slightly, though it was understood that no one would cross it. When the guests finally left, Ethan and Claire were left in the glow of the empty room, the quiet hum of the house filling the silence. They stood together near the window, looking out at the night. Snow had returned, pressing gently against the glass. "Did tonight feel different?" Claire asked. "Yes," Ethan said, taking her hand. "And it scared me a little." "Me too," she admitted. "But I liked it. I liked feeling seen, even if it's complicated." They stood there side by side, not moving. Outside, the world was dark and quiet. Inside, something inside them had shifted. The openness, the attention, the admiration it had changed the way they saw each other. The following week, life returned to its usual rhythm, but the undercurrent remained. Texts continued. Invitations were extended, more subtle now, more thoughtful. Ethan and Claire were aware of the line they had chosen to walk, aware of the tension between desire and loyalty, between attention and commitment. One evening they sat together on the couch, hands entwined. Neither spoke at first. The fire crackled. Shadows danced across the walls. Then Claire whispered almost to herself, "We're walking a line we can't see fully." Ethan nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I know, but we walk it together." They didn't know what the next invitation would bring. They didn't know if the attention from others would fade or grow stronger. They only knew that they had been changed by being watched, that the quiet admiration had awakened something they had thought was lost, and that facing it together mattered more than anything else. The night settled around them like a soft blanket. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, their hands were tight, their hearts alert, and their bond quietly unshakable. The world beyond the window could wait. For now, they had each other. And they understood that some experiences, even delicate and complicated, could strengthen a love that had endured more than a decade. And yet, in the back of both their minds, a single thought lingered. The next choice could bring closeness or uncertainty. The line between comfort and temptation had been drawn, and stepping forward even gently would reveal how strong they truly were. They didn't speak the words aloud, but both understood the truth. Love, attention, and curiosity were powerful forces. They could warm a heart or unsettle it. And in their quiet house, under the soft snow, Ethan and Claire faced that force together, aware, careful, and profoundly alive. The joke was said too easily to be forgotten. It happened on a cold Friday night when Ethan and Claire hosted a small dinner at their house near Lake Michigan. Snow pressed softly against the windows, and the living room smelled like roasted food and warm bread. They had invited only a few people, neighbors and friends who lived close enough to walk home if the roads froze overnight. Ethan moved easily through the room, refilling glasses and smiling when someone thanked him. Claire laughed often, her voice calm and bright, the way it had been when they first met years ago. To anyone watching, they looked settled and safe. But beneath that calm was something quieter, something unfinished. Mark and Olivia arrived last. They lived 2 houses down and were newer to the neighborhood. Mark was friendly and talkative, always full of opinions. Olivia was softer, with thoughtful eyes and a careful way of listening. They had been married almost as long as Ethan and Claire, but something about them felt different, restless. Like they were searching for something they couldn't name. Dinner passed with easy talk. Jobs, weather, small-town news. Someone poured more wine. The mood loosened. Laughter came faster. The room grew warmer. At some point, Mark leaned back in his chair and looked at Ethan and Claire with a grin. "You two are something else," he said. "It's rare to see a couple so steady." Claire smiled politely. Ethan nodded, unsure how to take it. "Seriously," Mark continued, "the way you listen to each other, it's the way you sit so close without even thinking. It's like watching a real partnership." Olivia laughed lightly. "Do you make marriage look simple?" Ethan shrugged. "It isn't," he said honestly. "That's why it's interesting," Mark replied, lifting his glass. "If more people could see what works, maybe fewer things would fall apart." The words were meant as praise. Everyone laughed. No one noticed how the idea settled quietly into the room. Later, as plates were cleared and music played low in the background, the talk turned softer. People sat closer. The snow outside thickened. The world beyond the windows felt far away. Claire noticed the way Olivia watched Ethan while he spoke, her eyes calm but focused. Ethan noticed Mark glancing at Claire when she moved across the room, the look quick but curious. It didn't feel threatening, just different. When the night ended, hugs were shared at the door. Mark squeezed Ethan's shoulder. Olivia told Claire she admired her confidence. The house went quiet again. As Ethan locked the door, Claire stayed. Near the window, looking out at the snow, she seemed thoughtful, distant in a way Ethan hadn't seen in a long time. "What's on your mind?" he asked. She hesitated. "Did tonight feel strange to you?" Ethan considered it. "A little," he said. "But not bad." Claire nodded slowly. "I felt noticed," she admitted. "Not just liked." "Really noticed?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He understood more than he wanted to admit. Days passed, but the feeling stayed. Text messages came from Mark about work and weather, but they carried a new tone. Olivia sent Claire a message asking about her hobbies, about how she stayed so calm and open. The conversations were polite, friendly, but there was an energy beneath them that hadn't been there before. One evening, Claire brought it up while they washed dishes. "What would you think," she asked carefully, "about having people over again just to talk, to be open?" Ethan dried a plate, listening. "Open how? Honest," she said. "No pretending. Just being ourselves." Ethan looked at her. He saw curiosity, not recklessness. Still, something in his chest tightened. "You mean letting them see us?" he said. Glare met his eyes. Yes, they stood in silence, water running, dishes forgotten. Ethan thought about the praise, the attention, the way it had felt to be admired after years of being simply known. "I don't want this to hurt us," he said. "I don't either," Claire replied quickly. "That's why I'm telling you." Talked late into the night. They set clear limits. No secrets. No crossing lines. Just openness, like a conversation without walls. When the next gathering happened, it was smaller. Only Mark and Olivia came. The lights were dim but warm. Music played softly. Coffee replaced wine. At first, it felt normal. They talked about books, travel, old memories. Laughter came easily again. Then the watching began. Not obvious, not uncomfortable, just quiet attention. Mark listened closely when Claire spoke, asking questions that showed he remembered her words. Olivia looked at Ethan as if his thoughts mattered deeply. Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and unease. Claire felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. They didn't touch, they didn't flirt. They simply existed under open eyes. As the night went on, the silence between words grew heavier. Every movement felt noticed. Every pause felt meaningful. Claire stood to refill mugs. Mark offered to help. They stood side by side in the kitchen, close but careful. "You have a strong presence," Mark said quietly. "It changes a room." Claire smiled politely. "So does honesty." In the living room, Olivia asked Ethan about his dreams, the ones he had set aside. No one had asked him that in years. He answered honestly, surprising himself. When the evening ended, goodbyes felt slower. Longer eye contact, softer voices after. The door closed. Ethan leaned against it, exhaling. That was intense. He said. Claire sat on the couch, hands folded. "Yes. Do you regret it?" She thought carefully. "No," she said, "but I don't fully understand it yet." They went to bed uneasy but quiet, backs turned but not distant. Over the next week, the air between them felt charged. They spoke more. They argued less, but something hovered just beyond reach. Claire caught herself replaying moments in her mind. Not actions, but feelings. Ethan noticed he stood taller at work, spoke with more confidence. One afternoon, Claire received a message from Olivia. Simple words. "Last night stayed with me." Claire stared at the screen, heart steady but alert. She didn't reply right away. That evening, she showed Ethan the message. He read it carefully. "How does that make you feel?" he asked. "Seen?" Claire said, "and afraid." Ethan nodded. "Me too." They realized then that letting others watch had opened something fragile. Not wrong, but powerful. Like opening a window during a storm, you'd feel alive. But the wind doesn't ask permission. Another message came, an invitation. It's clearer than before. A chance to talk again, to explore feelings, not actions. Ethan and Claire stood in their hallway, coats in hand, the house quiet around them. They knew this choice mattered. Outside, headlights waited. Inside. Their marriage stood steady but alert. Like something waking from sleep, they hadn't crossed any lines. But they were standing very close to one. And neither of them knew where the next step would lead.